Hello, and welcome to Research Group 6 third project, Risk Reduction Strategies for Multinational Enterprises. Risk reduction are measures that reduce the frequency or severity of losses, also known as loss control. Some of these risks that M&Es face are economic recessions, availability of workers, new technology, or government regulations. Risk reduction strategies can be as concrete and simple as routine quality inspections, or more abstract, such as financial hedging. When it comes to risk reduction strategies, there's generally two different types: short-term strategies and long-term strategies. Short-term strategies generally last for around a year and include things such as foreign exchange research, hiring local talent, and understanding local regulations. Companies often use short-term strategies for irregular natural disasters, such as COVID-19 pandemic or the recent Texas winter power outage. For risks that are short-term, only need to be considered once, or initial risks when beginning operation. When it comes to long-term risk reduction strategies, these tend to last for around 5 years, or up to 5 years. These can include building a robust supply network, building brand loyalty, and building dedicated localization teams. Companies tend to use long-term strategies when planning continuous operations where the risk remains, such as cultural understanding. When considering regular happenings as circumstances that affect businesses, such as different business seasons, and when the risk involved is ever-changing, such as supply chain disruptions. The first short-term strategy we'll be talking about is foreign exchange understanding. Foreign exchange is the trading of one currency for another. Understanding foreign exchange is when the business specifically plans for possible losses or gains due to fluctuating exchange rates. Some examples of problems that companies must account for involving foreign exchange rates is when exchange rates change due to speculation of deflation for a country, sudden inflation in a country, or when a country adopts a new type of currency, whether that be a physical currency like the US dollar or new emerging cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. When a company engages in understanding foreign exchange rates, they help mitigate losses due to sudden changes in important exchange rates and losses in investments made due to changing exchange rates. The next short-term strategy used by companies is when they hire experienced local talent. When operating in a foreign country, it is important to the people involved that are not only well-versed in local culture and customs, but also in local business structures and industry practices. Some problems that companies can face when entering a new foreign market are operations in the area are substantially different than their previous markets. This can be seen in countries such as Japan, where their high property costs requires most businesses and industry to rely on lean production. Seasonal problems in new areas of a new entering company can also pose problems, such as monsoon seasons or seasonal holidays that don't exist in their original country. Hiring experienced local talent helps mitigate losses due to oversight of common local circumstances, such as the energy crisis in South Africa, losses due to misunderstanding of cultural differences, and losses due to simple mistranslation. Global brands entering foreign markets have a rough time when it comes to translating their names, brands, or slogans into foreign languages. Mistranslation can cost businesses a lot of money and reputation in entering markets. There are many examples of these types of mistakes. Some blunders these companies made could have been avoided if they had local talent a part of these brands. For example, Mercedes-Benz entered the Chinese market under the brand name Benzi, which means rush to die. IKEA products were marketed in Thailand with Swedish names that in the Thai language meant sex and getting to third base. and Nike had to recall thousands of products when a decoration intended to resemble fire on the back of their shoes resembled the Arabic word for Allah. Another short-term strategy is understanding local regulations. Governmental regulations has a massive aspect in all areas of business, and understanding the differences and nuances of local regulations is key to being able to operate effectively in a new area. Some examples of these different regulations may be worker rights and status laws that differ from area to area, such as minimum wage or workers' compensation. Also, operational standards may change in different parts of the world depending on specific circumstances. For example, in some parts of the world, certain operations are not allowed during specific types of day. Local regulation understanding helps companies mitigate risks and losses from fines or time lost due to not properly following regulation, and possible legal costs for accidental breach of laws or contracts. The first long-term risk mitigation strategy is building robust supply networks. When it comes to production or simply distribution, many multinational enterprises require some form of supply or transportation network to operate in foreign and domestic markets. Ensuring that your company's network can stand against future losses is very important when it comes to distribution and transportation. Some examples of helping building a robust supply network include having sources for the same materials from different geographical locations or companies. For example, getting steel from both Korea and from Brazil, and not having exclusivity deals with certain providers who can only operate in one mode of transportation. For example, only operating within sea freight. Having a robust supply network helps mitigate losses from local shortages, losses from delays for specific modes of transportation, for example, storms preventing flights or ships from departure, and changes in domestic or foreign government regulations, such as tariffs. A second strategy that companies use for reducing risk long-term is building brand loyalty. When it comes to mitigating risks, having brand loyalty provides companies some of the best padding when it comes to losses from competitions with similar products. Some examples of helping build a brand is target advertisements towards specific groups of consumers that differ from the typical consumer of your product. This allows you to retain sales despite changing taste in the general consumer. This can be seen with C4's energy drinks being targeted towards athletes. Another example is providing consumers rewards or benefits for their continued business. This can be seen with the Amazon Prime program, or the Wawa Resorts program, or the Uber Rewards program. Having good brand loyalty helps reduce losses from changing consumer tastes, helps reduce losses from new competition entering the market, and reduces potential customer turnover due to changes in the quality of you or a competitor's product. One example where robust supply chains would have helped mitigate a lot of risk and a lot of problems for many multinational enterprises is the current global supply chain crisis. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, global supply chains have fractured and stalled. Rising prices, factory shutdowns, port congestion, and labor shortages have all contributed to that. Some facts about the crisis. Prices for containers and ships have quadrupled since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and necessary products are facing potentially disastrous shortages. For example, the Chinese Minister of Commerce advised citizens to stock food supplies for the winter due to dwindling supplies. Had corporations reduced risk by building robust supply chain networks? Factory shutdowns at key locations such as Vietnam or Japan wouldn't completely halt production in other countries, because companies would have sources in other nations that didn't shut down at the same time or didn't shut down at all, such as Mexico and the Philippines. Labor shortages and congestion at ports in the US wouldn't affect the US as hard, with alternate modes of transportation being more readily available and invested in. Another long-term risk reduction strategies that multinational enterprises engage in are dedicated localization and market teams. While having local talent can help mitigate the simplest of mistranslation and cultural differences, for a company to really operate effectively in a new environment, having a set of personnel deliberately to understand and keep up with culture is instrumental. Some examples of why companies want to have dedicated localization and market teams is so that they can recognize a change in consumer tastes in a particular country before it can negatively affect them. For example, the recent change in consumer culture in the US for a greater need of providing e-commerce options, as well as translating a new product name or slogan into a different language or cultural environment, such as work week differences from the Western world and the Arabic world. Dedicated localization and market teams help mitigate potential losses of consumer retention due to how consumers feel about the company, as well as reduces risks to losing profits due to changing cultural tastes. For example, the loss of hats being considered formal dress wear in the US. In conclusion, some short-term risk reduction strategies that M&Es can engage in is understanding foreign exchange rates, hiring experienced local talent, and understanding local regulations. Some long-term strategies include building robust supply chains, building brand loyalties, and dedicated localization and market teams. Thank you for watching. If you want to see the presentation or you want to see the references, links to both will be in the description below. Thank you for watching.